Aren't you just awesome for clicking this video? Let us know where you're from and what time it is there. Just relax as we narrate some real-life, true horror stories for you to help you fall asleep. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support means everything. Let's start. I've been close with Morgan for most of my adult life. We met in a chemistry lab in high school, got paired up for an experiment, and ended up laughing our way through the worst titration results the teacher had ever seen. From that moment on, we were inseparable. By the time we reached college, it only made sense we dormed together. Junior year, we got tired of the paper-thin dorm walls and meal cards, so we moved into a 3-bedroom apartment off campus with another girl named Tara. We weren't as close with Tara, but she was easy to live with and had her own circle. No problems there. Morgan was different. We shared everything. Heartbreaks, regrets, inside jokes we could trigger with a single word. I thought I knew her soul. Spring break was coming up. Tara and I planned to head back to our hometowns the same day. Morgan said she'd stay behind an extra night to work a final shift at her bookstore job. Nothing unusual. She said it like it was an afterthought, casual and unconcerned. I gave her a hug and told her I'd see her tomorrow. Probably sooner, I joked. I've been driving about 30 minutes down the interstate when it hit me. My laptop, the brick to the chest kind of realization. I cursed, pulled off onto the shoulder, and tore through my backpack. Nothing. I sat in my car, hands gripping the wheel, debating if I could make it without it. I had assignments to finish, notes stored locally, and no backup plan. I turned around. It was dusk by the time I reached the apartment again. The building was eerily quiet. Most students had already left for the break. I let myself in and immediately called out, "Morgan." No response. That wasn't too weird. Maybe she'd stepped out. But when I turned toward the hallway, I froze. Her bedroom door was wide open. Morgan never left her door open. Not when she wasn't home. Not ever. A tight pressure settled in my chest as I made my way toward my room. I pushed the door open and searched every surface, every drawer. Nothing. No laptop. My stomach churned. I turned back down the hallway and hesitated at her doorway. Her room was dim, blinds drawn, the air stale with the smell of half-burned incense. And there, sitting open on her bed next to her laptop, was mine. My breath caught. My laptop was on, screen active. She'd signed into my account. I could see it in my desktop background, my folders. She knew my password. I stepped inside, hands trembling, and gently touched the trackpad. Nothing suspicious at first, but then I looked at her screen. A folder was open. The title was just a string of numbers. I clicked it. Inside were photos, dozens of them. All of me. Some clearly taken in daylight while I was studying or on the couch. Others were worse. Me passed out on the floor after a party, sprawled on the couch in a thin shirt. One showed me wrapped in a towel, hair dripping, clearly coming out of the bathroom. My throat closed. I stepped back, panicked, nearly knocking over a stack of her books. My eyes darted to her closet. Something about it felt wrong. I pulled open the door and found, neatly folded in a plastic storage bin, several pieces of my clothing. Some things I hadn't even realized were missing. Things I would never have lent out. Private things. I snatched everything I could find, my laptop, my clothes, anything that was clearly mine, and fled the room. I locked my bedroom door, slammed the front door behind me, and ran to my car. My fingers could barely dial. When I reached my parents, I could hardly form a sentence. Morgan was in my account. I finally choked out. She's been watching me. They were silent. Not because they didn't care, but because they didn't know how to process it either. It was too surreal. Too much. The next day, I noticed I'd been blocked. On everything. Instagram, Snap, even my number. She was gone. Ghosted me completely. No confrontation. No apology. Just vanished. When Tara and I returned after break, Morgan's room was stripped bare. She'd moved out without a trace. I didn't see her again for almost a year. It was at a bar of all places. A bunch of mutual friends were out. She was there. She wouldn't look at me. Not once. She stayed on the opposite side of the room, nervously clutching her drink, eyes darting anywhere but in my direction. The image that stayed with me the most, more than the pictures, more than the betrayal, came flooding back months later. It was something I'd pushed down. The first month in that apartment, I'd come home drunk from a frat party. I barely remembered stumbling to bed, but I did remember waking up suddenly in the middle of the night. There was a sound like breathing but muffled. I sat up, dizzy, eyes trying to adjust. The closet door across from my bed creaked ever so slightly. I remember whispering, "Tara," thinking maybe she'd wandered in by mistake. But no one answered. I'd stared at that closet, frozen. The sliver of darkness between the door and the frame seemed to move just slightly. I remembered bolting down the hall, slamming on Tara's door, yelling like a maniac. She'd come out groggy and confused. We checked the closet together. Nothing. Morgan had stayed in her room the whole time. Allegedly. But now it made sense. She had been in my closet that night. What else had she done? How many nights had she watched me, hidden in the dark? How long had she been collecting my things, cataloging my life in photos, staring at me while I slept? I still don't know the answers. Maybe I never will. But I've never locked a door the same way since. Ezra was always different. We'd known each other since sophomore year of college. He had this quiet, brooding demeanor that some people might mistake for charm, but I knew it was something else. A weight behind his eyes. He once told me he rarely slept, that his nights were filled with vivid dreams, flashes of people who weren't there, voices that didn't belong. He said it with a kind of detachment, like someone describing the weather. I didn't pry. You don't pry when someone's darkness is that close to the surface. So when Ezra called me late one evening, voice strained and trembling, asking if he could crash at my place for a couple of nights, I said yes without hesitation. "It got bad," he muttered. "With Marcus." He was yelling. I almost hit him. I can't be there. He sounded like a live wire. I told him the couch was his. He showed up half an hour later, duffel bag slung over his shoulder, hoodie damp from the drizzle outside. He didn't offer much explanation about the fight, just dropped his stuff in the living room and melted into the couch like someone who hadn't had peace in a long time. The TV flickered with some first-person shooter while he mindlessly played. I tried to hang out for a bit, but it was awkward. Ezra wasn't talking, barely reacting. I eventually left him to it and went to bed. Sometime after 2 a.m., I woke up. My throat felt like sandpaper, and the water bottle beside my bed was empty. The apartment was silent. I tiptoed down the hallway toward the kitchen. As I passed the living room, I noticed the blanket on the couch was tossed aside. Ezra wasn't there. My stomach clenched. Maybe he was in the bathroom, I thought, or on the balcony getting air. I didn't check. I was too tired and too disoriented to care. I poured a glass of water and headed back toward my room. That's when I saw him. Standing in the darkest corner of my bedroom, next to the closet door, was Ezra. His arms were stiff at his sides, fingers splayed out, his head tilted slightly forward like he was listening for something. I couldn't even scream at first. I just stumbled back, heart pounding so hard I thought it would split my chest. "What the hell, Ezra?" I finally shouted, grabbing a pillow from my bed and throwing it at him. He didn't flinch, but he stopped making this sound, a kind of clicking, like he was mimicking the tapping of a clock. Just tick, 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 with his tongue, eyes wide open and unfocused. Then, without a word, he turned and left the room, walking in this bizarre, robotic shuffle. I followed, half expecting him to collapse. He didn't. He just lay back down on the couch, turned his back and curled up. I stood there, shaking, sleepwalking. That had to be it, right? The next morning, I asked him gently over coffee, "Do you sleepwalk?" He blinked. "No, not that I know of. You were in my room last night." Clicking, just standing there. Ezra rubbed the side of his face, clearly disturbed. "I don't remember that." He brushed it off. We moved on. Spent most of the day watching movies and making small talk. Normal stuff. Too normal. That night, I double-locked my bedroom door. Still, I couldn't sleep. Around 3 a.m., I woke up again, my heart racing for no reason. Something had changed in the air. I got out of bed and crept down the hallway. The couch was empty again. Ezra's duffel bag still sat in the corner, untouched. "Ezra." I called. No answer. The bathroom was dark. The kitchen, too. But something drew my eyes back to the bedroom. To my closet. The door was cracked open, just a few inches. From within that narrow gap, I saw a face. Ezra's. His eyes were glassy, unblinking. His mouth was covered by both hands, as though trying to contain something. Laughter, a scream, words I didn't want to hear. And even muffled, I could hear it. Whispering. He was whispering into his hands. I screamed, "Get out. What the hell is wrong with you?" He didn't move, so I stormed over and yanked the door open. He was crouched inside, curled unnaturally. In one hand, held low and tight against his hip, was a kitchen knife. A long one, serrated. My knees almost gave out. I shoved him back instinctively and ran into the bathroom, locking the door behind me. My mind raced. Do I call the cops? Do I confront him? Was he even awake? Minutes passed, maybe hours. Eventually, I heard him shuffle out of the bedroom, then the sound of the couch creaking under his weight. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. When the sun finally rose, I texted Marcus. Just one message. What exactly happened before Ezra came here? And has he ever done anything like this before? Marcus didn't respond until midday. His reply came in 3 long, frantic messages. Ezra came into my room with a knife, one red. Middle of the night. Just stood at the end of my bed, whispering. I tackled him. He said he was sleepwalking. I didn't buy it. My skin crawled. Ezra had lied to me. He said he didn't sleepwalk. He said it like he meant it. But this wasn't sleepwalking. This was something else. Something calculated. Something dangerous. I told Ezra he needed to leave. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. Just told him it wasn't working out. He nodded like he already knew and left without argument. He went back to his mother's house, I think. We still follow each other on social media. He'll sometimes like my posts, comment occasionally, as though nothing ever happened. As if he hadn't hidden in my closet with a knife, whispering secrets to no one. I never blocked him. Maybe some part of me wanted to keep an eye on him, just in case. Because there's a part of me that still hears that clicking when I try to fall asleep. And some nights, I leave the closet light on. I've never been the type to have many friends. I keep to myself mostly. A few acquaintances from class, co-workers I nod at during shifts, the usual. But Silas was different. We met in an intro to sociology class during my second semester. We bonded in the laziest way possible, cheating on quizzes, whispering answers during group work, side-eyeing the professor together whenever he went on his tangents. It wasn't deep friendship, but it became consistent, reliable. Eventually, we started hanging out outside class. Drinks, video games, sometimes just sitting around talking about life in that vague, cynical way you do when you're in your early 20s and think the world is conspiring against you. I started telling Silas things I didn't really share with other people. Not big confessions, just personal stuff, insecurities, family drama, those middle-of-the-night thoughts you hate yourself for having. I wouldn't say I trusted him, but I didn't distrust him either. He was just there. One Friday night, I was feeling restless. I texted him to see if he wanted to hang out, and he said we should hit this bar near campus. I agreed. He said he'd pregame a little, and by the time I picked him up, he was already buzzed. At the bar, it got worse. Silas went all in: shots, mixed drinks, whatever someone handed him. Within an hour, he was stumbling, slurring, grabbing at girls' shoulders like he thought he was being charming. He wasn't. He was humiliating. I had to apologize more than once on his behalf, trying to smile while pulling him back, saying he's just had a bit too much, over and over. Eventually, I got fed up and dragged him to the car. "You need to chill the hell out," I snapped. He just laughed, mumbled something about needing to blow off steam. I drove him back to his apartment. He could barely stand when I pulled him out of the passenger seat. The building was one of those ugly, beige student complexes with paper-thin walls and flickering hallway lights. I'd never been inside his place before. When we stepped in, it smelled like old takeout and something faintly chemical. Maybe cleaning supplies, maybe something else. I guided him to the couch. He collapsed instantly, muttering nonsense before going dead silent. His phone slipped from his fingers and hit the carpet face up. Still unlocked. I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was suspicion. I always wonder how Silas managed to afford the things he did. New shoes, concert tickets, endless drinks, without ever mentioning a job. I picked up the phone. The camera roll was boring. Memes, screenshots of Reddit posts, blurry pictures from parties. But when I scrolled through the album section, something caught my eye. An album titled Sleepers. My thumb hovered. I hesitated, but I tapped it. What I saw will never leave me. Photos. Dozens. All of young women. Some clothed. Some partially. Some not all. But it wasn't the nudity that made my skin crawl. It was the expressions. Eyes swollen from crying. Tape over mouths. Rope visible around wrists or ankles. One girl stared directly into the camera with a look of hollow terror. Another had blood on her lip, smeared across her cheek. The backgrounds in some of the pictures were too familiar. That blue bedsheet. I turned slowly, dread sinking into my stomach, and stepped towards Silas's bedroom. I opened the door. There it was. The same sheet. The same wall color. Even the scuffed nightstand in the corner was visible in some of the photos. I backed out of the room like something might reach for me if I turned my back. Before leaving, I sent 2 of the least graphic photos to myself. I didn't know what else to do. I deleted the message thread from his phone, gently set it back where it had fallen, and left. The next day, he texted me. "Silas, I know you were in my room. We need to talk." I was followed by, "Silas, if you saw anything, they were just roleplay photos. Nothing real. Just girls I met online who were into that stuff." I didn't reply. My hands were shaking. I didn't know how he knew I'd gone into his room, or that I'd seen the pictures. Unless he remembered something from the night before, or had some kind of alert set up, or later that night, just as I was starting to fall asleep, my doorbell rang. Once. Then again and again and again, 30 times in a row. I sat up in bed, heart hammering. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. Then I heard his voice outside. "Come on, man. I know you're in there. We just need to talk." I didn't answer. 2 hours passed. Around 3 a.m., rocks started hitting my window. I peeked through the blinds. Silas stood below, head tilted up, his face pale in the moonlight. He looked furious. But worse, he looked calm. Then I heard the sliding sound of one of my windows being tested. The soft push of hands against the frame. That's when I grabbed my phone, called him, and shouted into the receiver. "If you don't leave right now, I'm calling the police." I'm not playing. I hung up before he could respond. The rock stopped. The shuffling stopped. Eventually, he left. He hasn't contacted me again, but I still have the 2 photos on my phone. I don't know what to do with them. They're evidence of something. But of what exactly? He could claim they were staged. Fake. Roleplay like he said. But I saw their eyes. No one fakes that kind of fear. Every time I walk past a mirror, I wonder if I'm next. If I made the mistake of seeing something I wasn't supposed to. If the calm in his voice wasn't panic, but planning. If I disappear, someone will find this. Maybe that's why I'm writing it. Just in case. There was a time in my life when loneliness crawled into every corner of my routine. I was 29, jobless after a messy company closure, and spending more hours than I'd like to admit just staring at the ceiling. Out of boredom and a little desperation, I turned to a part of the internet I swore I'd never explore: personal ads. Not the dating kind. Those quick, empty hookup listings tucked deep inside the darker parts of old forums. This was on a local site called Maple Connect, our city's low-budget Craigslist knockoff. Most of the listings were either blatant scams or grainy photos of women who looked nothing like their descriptions. That is, until I stumbled across one titled F/27. No games. Just one night. Discreet. Attached was a photo of a woman. Average build, shoulder-length brown hair, a plain hoodie. She looked like someone you'd see working at the bookstore or walking her dog in the park. Not glamorous, just real. That realism is what pulled me in. She left her number in the listing. I texted her with something painfully generic. Hey, saw your post. You still looking to meet? The bubble turned blue. I message, and almost instantly, the 3 dots danced on screen. Then her reply. Hi, I'm Natalie. You can call me Nat. We messaged back and forth for maybe 10 minutes. Nothing deep. Light flirting. She was quick to give me her address after I asked. 209 Hemlock Lane. A dead-end street on the far side of town I hadn't been to in years. I stared at the message for a moment, keys already in hand, and told myself this was nothing. Just a late-night drive to a stranger's house to feel something, anything. I arrived just before midnight. The neighborhood was darker than I expected. No street lamps, just a few dim porch lights. Most of the houses looked abandoned or close to it. Her place was the last on the block, the number 209 barely visible on the crooked mailbox out front. I parked at the curb and hesitated. I texted her here. Which one's yours? She replied within seconds. Last one. Come around back. Porch light's broken. That was the first thing that felt wrong. Why around back? I texted again, why? And watched the typing indicator flash, then vanish. No response. I sat there for a full minute, just staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror. Then I told myself I was being paranoid. If I backed out now, I'd never stop thinking about it. So I opened the car door and stepped into the humid night air. The house looked worse up close. Peeling paint, tall grass, broken porch steps. I crept around the side, brushing past overgrown hedges, until I reached the wooden gate leading to the backyard. I unlatched it, the rusted hinge squealing like it hadn't been used in years. The backyard was almost pitch black. The moon gave just enough light to see the shed in the far corner and the back porch. I took a few steps in and then froze. There was movement in the second floor window. A silhouette. Someone was watching me. As soon as I looked up, the figure moved and the blinds snapped shut. My stomach twisted. That window had no light behind it, which meant whoever was there had been standing in total darkness. Then my phone buzzed. Be right out. Just brushing my hair. It was Natalie, but something about it felt robotic, like it had been written in advance. My heart pounded. I wasn't sure if it was nerves or instinct, but something screamed at me to leave. That's when I heard it. A soft crunch. A stick breaking. From near the shed. I turned on my phone's flashlight and swept it across the yard. For a second, I thought I saw an arm, pale, thin, disappear behind the shed. I stood there in paralyzed silence. Then, without thinking, I turned off the flashlight and backed away, slow and quiet. I didn't run. I just walked calmly until I reached the gate. Then I slipped through, made it to my car, and climbed in. Just as I went to shut the door, bang! A second-floor window slammed open. A woman's voice, shrieking furious, Wait, don't go. But I couldn't see her face, only hear that unhinged, wild tone. Like something was unraveling in her mind. I started the engine, slammed it into gear, and peeled away. As I hit the end of the street, I heard a sharp crack, like a gunshot. My car veered slightly, but I didn't stop. Not until I was 5 blocks out, and the steering felt sluggish. Flat tire. I pulled over and checked it. A clean puncture. Later, a roadside mechanic pulled the bullet from the rubber. He stared at me and just shook his head. "Someone shot at you, man," he said. "You're lucky it hit the tire." The police got involved. Turns out 209 Hemlock Lane had been under quiet investigation for a series of missing persons linked to shady online hookups. 3 people were arrested. A woman who looked nothing like the picture I'd seen, and 2 men. One had a record for assault. The house was condemned within a month. I heard the trial resulted in some convictions, but I stopped following the case. That night haunts me, not just for what happened, but for how close I came to stepping through that back door. A few more steps, and I would have been inside, blinds closed, no witnesses. Since then, I haven't touched a dating site. I still have the text conversation saved, though. Sometimes I read it over and wonder how many others got that same message. Be right out. Just brushing my hair. The check and the shed. My stepfather, Greg, has always been a people pleaser. A retired mechanic and farmer. He lives with my mom in a quiet stretch of backcountry called Willow Ridge, where the neighbors are few and far between, and trust is mostly measured by a handshake. It's the kind of place where you leave your keys in the ignition and your doors unlocked, because ain't no one dumb enough to steal from someone who owns a shotgun. Last fall, Greg decided it was time to sell his old Ford F-250, a workhorse of a truck with rust around the wheel wells, but an engine that still purred like it had something to prove. He posted it on a local classified site, Ridgelist, asking $6,000 negotiable. Within days, he got a message from a woman named Belinda who claimed to live out in Jasper County, almost 4 hours away. She sounded sweet on the phone, said she'd been looking for a truck like that for months, said her husband had passed, and she needed it for hauling wood to keep her boys warm for the winter. But she also had an endless list of excuses about why she couldn't meet halfway. Bad leg, no one to watch the kids, trouble with her car. Greg, being Greg, offered to drive it out himself. My mom Lynn wasn't thrilled. "Something's off," she told him the night before. People make up excuses when they're hiding something. But Greg brushed it off. "We'll bring the title. I'll drive the truck, you follow in the Subaru. We'll be home by dinner." They left early that Saturday. The address Belinda gave them was a lonely gravel road cutting through dense woods, the kind of road that made your tires whisper doubts with every mile. The house itself was more a shack than a home. Peeling white paint, a satellite dish hanging by one screw, windows so grimy they barely reflected light. When they knocked, Belinda came out in a stained flannel robe and offered a smile that didn't touch her eyes. She handed over a post-dated check and asked if they'd leave the plates on the truck just until I get mine sorted. Greg considered it. Lynn didn't. She pulled him aside, out of earshot. "You leave those plates, and that check bounces. We're liable. You know that, right?" They argued. Eventually, Greg caved on the plates, but not the check. Lynn won that battle, sort of. She still wasn't happy, and the silence on the 4-hour drive back home was thick as fog. A week later, the check bounced. Surprise. Greg tried calling. No answer. He left voicemails. Nothing. Then a message in the hospital, "Complications, call you soon." That was it. No follow-up. This time, Lynn didn't ask. She told Greg they were going back. They rented a flatbed trailer just in case the truck had been stripped or sabotaged. When they pulled up to the house, the lights were off. No one answered the door, but the truck was still there, tucked in a lean-to at the back of the property. Greg loaded it up. As he tightened the last strap, Lynn disappeared for a minute. When she returned, she had a crumpled piece of paper. "What did you do?" Greg asked. "Left her a note," she said flatly. "Just told her thanks for wasting our time. Maybe she'll think twice next time she tries to con somebody." They were 10 minutes down the road when the phone rang. Lynn put on speaker. Belinda's voice came through, low and cold. "I know where y'all live. You made a mistake coming back here." Then she hung up. Greg tried to brush it off. "Empty threat," he muttered. "Just mad she didn't get away with it." But Lynn couldn't sleep that night. Neither could I once she called and told me the whole story. 2 days later, at 3:13 in the morning, Greg woke to a sound that didn't belong. He told me it was like hearing a zipper unfasten underwater. Quiet, wrong, but undeniable. He sat up, and in the moonlight filtering through the curtains, he saw a shape climbing in through the window. It was Belinda, hair wild, eyes sunken, her robe replaced with something dark and shapeless. And in her hand, gleaming in the moonlight, a knife. She didn't say anything, just stared, as if the room were hers and he was trespassing. Lynn screamed. Greg yelled and lunged, catching her arm just as the knife came down. It grazed his shoulder, shallow but hot. The adrenaline took care of the rest. He wrestled her to the ground and pinned her while Lynn called 911, voice trembling so badly the dispatcher had to repeat every question. By the time the police arrived, Belinda was lying on the floor, bleeding slightly from where Greg had slammed her elbow against the dresser. She never spoke a word, not even as they cuffed her and dragged her out into the night. They found a car parked 2 blocks away, engine still warm. Inside were rope, duct tape, a crowbar, and a notebook filled with names and addresses. Most were crossed out. One name wasn't, Gregory Hensley. We never learned exactly what her plan had been, but the implication was clear enough. She'd done this before, got people to bring their valuables to her, baited them with fake checks, and lashed out when they fought back. The trial was quick. She pled not guilty by reason of mental defect. They sent her to a secure psychiatric facility. We don't know how long she'll be there, but we've all changed since then. Greg reinforced the windows. Lynn keeps a bat next to the bed. And I can't look at classified listings anymore without picturing someone waiting on the other end with a smile that doesn't quite reach their eyes. In the fall of 2014, I was a single dad trying to hold my life together with duct tape and hope. My son, Mason, had just turned 12, and he was obsessed with hockey. We lived in a quiet cul-de-sac in Southbridge, where street hockey was the closest thing we had to a rink. Our makeshift goal, 2 milk crates and a plastic lawn chair, had seen better days. One night, I found an ad on a site called Town Wheel, which was like Craigslist, but even sketchier. Someone in a small town called Ridgetop, about 2 hours away, was selling a full regulation net, complete with sticks and a bag of pucks, for just $40. The photo looked decent, used sure but solid. The seller's name was Roy, and when I called him, his voice was low, slow, like someone who didn't talk much. He agreed to meet halfway, just off exit 42 on the interstate. Said he had a buddy who'd follow with the equipment in a separate truck. We arranged to meet at 9 p.m. The only time Roy said he'd be off work. I should have known better. But Mason had been practically vibrating with excitement, and after years of trying to make up for what he'd lost when his mom walked out, I wasn't about to say no. We took my ex's old Dodge Caravan, the only thing big enough to fit a hockey goal. Mason packed his stick, just in case he could take a few shots before we drove back. The rest stop was deserted when we got there. Just one flickering light over the parking lot, and a vending machine humming by the bathrooms. I parked under the brightest lamp and told Mason to stay inside until we saw the gear. Right on time, a red pickup pulled in and rolled to a stop directly in front of us. A man in a dark cap leaned out his window. "You Jason?" he called out. "Yeah." I replied, stepping closer. He gave a tight nod. My buddy's pulling up with a net. I glanced at his truck bed. Empty. A warning bell rang in my head. Behind me, I heard Mason unlock the passenger door and stick his head out. Is that it, Dad? Stay in the car, I said, trying to sound calm. Another truck turned off the highway and pulled in behind the first. Then a third. All three lined up like a convoy. I backed up a step. None of the trucks had a net in the back. Not even a stick. Doors opened. 5 men stepped out. Thick, heavy men with shaved heads. Jackets too clean for construction workers, but too ragged for anything else. One of them, a bald guy with wraparound sunglasses despite the darkness, nodded at me. Where's the money? I swallowed. You said $40 for the gear. Where is it? You see it, he said, mockingly looking around. Do we look like F*** King eBay to you? 2 of the others started toward the van. Hey, I barked, stepping between them and the passenger door. Leave my kid alone. One of them cracked his knuckles. Ain't about your kid, man. It's about the lesson. I reached for my wallet and held it up. Take it. Just let us go. The bald one snatched it, flipped through the bills, maybe $80 total, and tossed the empty wallet back at me. That's it. What do you take us for, Charity? Then, one of them moved fast, too fast. He smashed the rear window of the van with a crowbar, and Mason screamed. I lost it. I lunged forward, grabbing at the guy's arm, but he shoved me back into the bumper. My ribs lit up in pain. I could hear Mason crying inside, calling for me. I scrambled up, fists clenched, ready to throw myself between them. Then everything froze. A new vehicle rolled in off the highway. A cruiser. Red and blue lights exploded in the parking lot like salvation from the sky. All the men turned at once. There was a split second where no one moved, like the moment before a thunderclap. Then they ran. The bald one dove into his truck. 2 others leapt into the second. The third tried reversing, but hit the curb. The police car accelerated, siren finally whooping to life, and clipped the rear of the last pickup as it spun to flee. The van door opened, and Mason ran to me, sobbing into my side. Are they gone, Dad? Did they take anything? No, I whispered, holding him tight. They didn't take anything that matters. Backup arrived. One of the officers took my statement, while the others zip-tied the 2 men who hadn't escaped. They found duct tape, rope, zip ties, and a baseball bat in the back of their truck. It wasn't just a mugging. They were planning something else. Something worse. Mason didn't talk the whole ride home. The officer followed us all the way back to Southbridge, just to be sure. We replaced the van window the next day. Mason never asked about the hockey net again. He quit the team at school that spring. Said he just wasn't into it anymore. But I knew better. That night stole something from him. Something I'll never get back. As for me, I don't answer ads anymore. Not even for furniture. And every time I pass exit 42, I grip the wheel a little tighter and glance over my shoulder just to make sure no one's following. The clock on my dashboard flickered to 4:08 a.m. I was already 10 minutes behind schedule for my shift at the loading docks. My coffee was lukewarm, and the highway felt like it belonged to me and the ghosts of the night. The road was quiet, lit only by the occasional overhead light slicing through the dark. I was barreling down the middle lane of I-71 South, doing about 80 in a 65, when I noticed a set of headlights in my left mirror gaining fast. The car flew past me on the left, a gray Honda coupe, smooth and silent. I instinctively looked over. The driver was a pale man, late 20s maybe, clean-shaven with sharp, sunken features. But what froze me wasn't him. It was the frantic shape behind him. There in the back seat, a woman was pounding on the rear window with the side of her fist, her mouth wide open in a scream I couldn't hear. At first, I blinked unsure. Maybe she was drunk. Maybe it was a prank. But then the driver jerked the wheel slightly and reached back with one arm, hitting her hard. Her body folded, disappearing below the window line. That's when I knew. This wasn't a lover's quarrel. This was a kidnapping. I floored it and pulled in behind the gray Honda, tried to keep pace. We were flying now, 90, maybe more. My heart hammered, but I didn't think. I just acted. I kept my eyes locked on that car, watching as the driver's hand shot backward again and again. Each time, the woman's arms flailed back up, trying to shield herself. I snatched my phone and dialed 911, shouting to the operator over the roar of the road. Gray Honda Accord, heading south on I-71. He's hitting her. He's beating her in the back seat. While I talked, the car ahead suddenly slowed, brake lights flaring like red warnings in the dark. He knew I was following him. He was testing me. I had to think fast. I passed him quickly and took the next exit, climbing only halfway up the ramp. Then I cut hard across the grassy shoulder and merged back onto the highway. My tires kicked up dirt, and the van behind me honked in surprise. I didn't care. I was already back on the interstate and chasing again. The operator was still on the line, calm but focused, asking for landmarks, speed, license plate. I gave him everything I could between gasps for breath. I saw the Honda again. He must have been doing 100, but I closed in. As soon as I got within 10 car lengths, he braked again, hard this time, and swerved to block me. Then he did the last thing I expected. He stopped, dead center in the lane. My car screeched to a halt barely a foot behind him. The driver door opened, and he stepped out, tall, wiry, moving fast. He was holding something in his hand. I couldn't tell what it was, a crowbar maybe. I panicked, slammed the car into reverse. He broke into a sprint toward me. I backed up, veering slightly, until he stopped chasing. Then I threw it back in drive, swerved around his car, and took off again. The operator told me a state trooper was ahead, 2 miles out. Just keep driving, she said. Do not stop. He followed. I checked my rearview mirror and saw his headlights, angry and close. We tore down the highway like bullets, me in front, him behind, the lines on the road smearing together in my vision. Then, red and blue light. The flashing burst like salvation across my rearview mirror. A patrol car coming in hot. It darted across lanes behind the Honda. The driver tried to veer away, but there was nowhere to go. He pulled over, finally, his car rolling to a stop on the grass. I pulled over too, maybe 30 feet ahead, still unsure if it was really over. The trooper stepped out, gun drawn, shouting commands. I watched, breathless, as the man dropped to the ground. Another unit arrived within minutes. They opened the rear door of the Honda and helped the woman out. She collapsed into their arms. Her face was bloodied, her lips split. Her arms trembled as she pointed to me, sobbing. He saved me, she kept saying. That man saved my life. Her name was Cameron. She was 23. Her ex-boyfriend had come to her apartment 3 hours earlier, begging to talk. When she refused, he forced the door, beat her unconscious, and shoved her into the car with the child locks engaged. He took her phone, her purse, everything. Just before I saw them on the highway, she'd regained consciousness and began screaming at every car they passed. He had no plan. Or maybe he did. Either way, I was just lucky I looked at the right moment, and that I didn't look away. I don't fly. Never have. Probably never will. There's something about being locked in a metal box 30,000 feet above the ground that makes my skin crawl. So when my cousin entered the Cape Shore Marathon, I offered to drive the 14 hours from Michigan to Maine. Alone. I left at 2:45 p.m., full tank, snacks, playlist queued. By the time I crossed into upstate New York, it was midnight and I was halfway down Route 60, a long, winding state highway that cuts through endless stretches of empty farmland and forgotten forest. The road was black glass. No traffic, No lights, just the faint drone of my tires and the soft hum of music trying to keep me awake. Somewhere around 1:30 a.m., after 10 hours behind the wheel, I started getting that heavy lid sensation. You know the one, your body's begging you to stop, but your brain keeps whispering just a little further. That's when I saw the headlights. At first, it was just a glow in the rearview mirror, distant and unremarkable. But within seconds, it was right behind me. I was already doing 70. This guy had to be pushing 90. I slid into the right lane to let him pass. Instead, he pulled up alongside me. For a full minute, he matched my speed exactly. A 90s era black pickup, dirty and dented, with 2 dark windows. I could see the silhouette of the driver's head just beyond the glare of his own lights. We were bumper to bumper, his front aligned with my rear. Then he started drifting closer, slowly nudging into my lane. I jerked the wheel to avoid a collision. Then he dropped back behind me. I sped up. So did he. When I changed lanes, he did too. Every time, my hands gripped the wheel tighter. I told myself it had to be some drunk idiot or maybe a guy with a grudge against sedans. But I knew deep down that wasn't it. The truck flashed its high beams. Once, twice, then again, rapidly. I didn't slow down. I couldn't. I kept watching the horizon, praying for a town, a cop, even another damn car. But there was nothing but black highway and trees. I tapped the gas harder. He stayed with me. Suddenly, the pickup swerved into the other lane, roared past me, and then jerked violently in front, cutting me off. I slammed on the brakes. My tires screamed. My body lurched against the seatbelt. He slowed to a crawl, forcing me to follow. Then his hazard lights blinked on. He waved, just a hand out the window beckoning. I didn't stop. I floored it into the other lane and gunned past him. My heart was jackhammering now. I must have hit 100. My car shook with every bump in the road. But he wasn't far behind. I took the next exit without even reading the sign. The ramp curved sharply into a red light. I hit the brakes hard. My breath was ragged, my chest tight. I thought maybe, just maybe I lost him. Then the headlights reappeared. He pulled up next to me, slowly, like a predator drawing close to wounded prey. The passenger window rolled down. Inside were 3 figures. All of them wore blank, white vendetta masks, those smug, smirking expressions glowing in the dashboard light. They stared at me, unmoving. One of them tilted his head like a curious bird. That was all I could take. The light was still red, but I didn't care. I blew through the intersection, tires screeching, engine howling. This time, I didn't look back. I didn't stop until I found a well-lit Walmart parking lot 20 minutes later, filled with trucks and overnight workers. I parked close to the entrance, locked the doors, and curled into the driver's seat, every nerve in my body still buzzing. I didn't sleep much. When I woke around 7 a.m., the sun was rising. Bright, normal, as if the night hadn't happened at all. But it had. I told my cousin, my friends, my coworkers. Most of them nodded politely, then changed the subject. You can't always explain to people that something doesn't have to end in blood to be a threat. That sometimes being watched is enough. I still don't know who they were. There were no plates on the truck, none I could see. Just rust and dirt. But every time I drive a long stretch of empty road, I catch myself checking the mirror a little too often, just to be sure there's no smirking mask behind me. It was the second Tuesday in March, just past midnight, when I began the drive home from Bells Point back to Millbury, a route I'd taken countless times before. That night, though, the fog was unlike anything I'd ever seen. Dense, blinding, and alive, it clung to the road like a slow-moving tide. My high beams were useless, swallowed by the gray void that drifted endlessly across the blacktop. I'd spent the day wandering around the city with some old friends, bookstores, a late lunch, aimless chatter. It had been a nice break from the static rhythm of work and obligations. But now I was alone, tired, and threading my car down a stretch of Route 8 that was completely deserted. Every few minutes I'd tap the hazard lights, just in case someone behind me needed to know I was there. Not that there was anyone, just me, the fog, and the odd, distant rumble of a semi barreling through the night far ahead or behind. I was just starting to relax into the monotony of it when a car appeared. I didn't see it approach. One moment the road was empty, the next it was there, a black sedan parked awkwardly on a shoulder, one side, still kissing the white line. I slammed the brakes and swerved just slightly to avoid it. My pulse jumped. I pulled over a few car lengths ahead, engine idling, trying to catch my breath. In my mirror, I saw the sedan slowly creep forward, inching completely off the road like it had been waiting for me. Its window rolled down. A man's arm emerged and gestured, an exaggerated, slow wave motion. I hesitated. Logic told me it was probably someone trying to ask for help. But my gut, even in the fog and exhaustion, felt otherwise. Still, curiosity got the better of me. I pulled onto a nearby side road, just as the sedan turned down it. The gravel cracked under my tires, swallowed by the fog. The sedan stopped. Its driver door opened. The man who stepped out was tall and lean, probably in his early 30s. He wore a dark winter coat and jeans. His face was pale under my headlights. He walked up to my window, smiling with a strange calmness that didn't quite fit the setting. I rolled my window down, barely a crack. "Hey," he said, leaning down slightly. "Sorry about that. Didn't mean to startle you. Thought you might have needed to pull off too." "No, I'm good. Just taking it slow in the fog." He nodded, still smiling. "It's nasty out tonight. You live around here?" I hesitated. "Just passing through." He raised his eyebrows. "Really shouldn't be out in this. Visibility's nothing. Dangerous." "I'm careful," I said. Then his tone changed, less friendly. "So, why'd you pull over?" I swallowed. "Got a call," I lied. "Needed to check something." He tilted his head slightly. "Huh. No Bluetooth." I didn't answer. He gestured vaguely behind him. "I'll live right down the road. Actually, wife and kid. If you want to wait it out, you're welcome. Got a couch. Some tea." I shook my head. "I'm okay, thanks." His smile faded. "Just a little. It's 10 times more likely someone dies in fog this thick. You really want to risk that?" His eyes weren't concerned. They were measuring me. "No, really. I'm fine." He stood there a second too long, then glanced back toward his car. That's when I saw movement inside. Another figure. A second person, one I hadn't noticed before, sitting in the passenger seat. Then the man outside reached for my door handle. It didn't open. Thank God it was locked. His expression hardened, and he said something I couldn't hear through the glass. At the same moment, the passenger door of his car swung open and another man sprinted toward me from the fog. This one heavier, wielding a wooden baseball bat. I slammed the car into reverse. The man outside shouted something, maybe to the other guy, maybe to me. The bat swung as I backed up, thudding off the pavement where my car had just been. I yanked the wheel, spun onto the main road, and hit the gas. My tires skidded on the wet gravel before gripping. The fog made it impossible to see more than 30 feet ahead, but I didn't stop. I didn't even breathe until I was back on the highway, speeding through the gray soup, every nerve in my body wired tight. I didn't look in the mirror. I just drove. For weeks after that night, I couldn't stop wondering, what would have happened if I'd rolled down the window further? Gotten out? Followed him down that road? How many others had pulled over for the same reason? And what if no one had come back? Now, every time I drive past that stretch of highway, even in daylight, I keep my doors locked, my windows up, and my eyes on every car that looks just a little too still in the fog. Because some people aren't stranded. They're waiting. The road was a graveyard after midnight. No headlights, no movement, just the rhythmic flick of yellow lane reflectors flashing past like a metronome. It was April 2020, a month after the world started locking down. I was working overnights at a medical center in Bayfield, and my commute home took me up a quiet, narrow stretch of the Eastwood Parkway, 10 miles of cracked asphalt and overgrown shoulders winding toward the hills where I lived. The pandemic had emptied the roads like a ghost town. I hadn't seen another vehicle in either direction for the last 3 miles. So when I saw the red SOS beacon blinking just ahead, perched on the roadside like a warning flare, I instinctively slowed. There was a car, silver, compact, slightly tilted as if pulled over in a rush. Its hazard lights pulsed weakly through the gloom. As I crept past, a man appeared from the driver's side, waving both arms in broad, frantic motions. I wasn't thinking like I should have been. I was tired, half-zoned from a 14-hour shift, and I wasn't used to people being out anymore. So I pulled over. I left my engine running and stepped out. The man approached quickly, his breath misting in the cold air. He looked to be in his late 20s, short dark hair under a thin hoodie, with a surgical mask pulled tight across his face. Battery died, he said. Been out here for over an hour. Phone's dead too. Please, can I just use yours to call someone? I didn't carry jumper cables, and something about his voice felt rehearsed, like a pitch he'd practiced. But I hesitated anyway. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was just human instinct. So I pulled out my phone, unlocked it, and handed it to him. Thanks, he said, stepping toward his car. Just need a sec. As he walked off, talking into the phone, I stood there like a fool, waiting. The front door of his car was still open. A flicker of suspicion crept in. I wasn't sure what made me do it, but I stepped closer and leaned in, peering into the front seat. The keys were still in the ignition. I reached in and turned the key halfway. Dashboard lit up. Battery wasn't dead. The hazard lights clicked on, steady and strong. The radio came to life, static humming from the speakers. Then I turned the key fully, and the engine roared to life. That's when it hit me. Trap. A pair of arms exploded from the back seat and locked around my throat, dragging me back into the car. A voice screamed from outside, "Hey, hey!" I thrashed, twisting hard to the right. The hands around my neck slipped, and I stumbled backward out of the vehicle, landing hard on the pavement. The one from the back seat was younger than I expected. Teenager, maybe 16. Wild-eyed, shaking, no weapon that I could see. The first man was running back now, yelling, phone still in hand. I didn't wait. I dove into my own car, threw it in gear, and peeled away. A second later, a deafening pop split the air behind me. Glass shattered. I flinched, swerving, barely keeping control of the wheel. My rear windshield had a hole in it, clean, round, surrounded by jagged cracks. A bullet. He had a gun. I didn't stop until I reached my driveway, 10 miles away. I parked sideways on the lawn, tires digging ruts into the dirt, adrenaline spiking like I was still in the middle of it. But the fear didn't end there, because he still had my phone, and it was still unlocked. Every app, every password, my save home address, my banking info, everything. I called the police from my parents' landline. They came within the hour. I told them everything, the location, the description, the layout of the car. They listened, nodding, then recommended I contact my cell provider. Problem was, AT&T didn't open until 7 a.m. So I sat with the cops in my kitchen, heart racing, and used my dad's iPhone to activate Find My iPhone. I locked the device remotely and sent a warning message. This phone is being tracked. Authorities notified, but it was too late. By the time I called AT&T to request a trace, there was no record of any outgoing calls from the phone after mine earlier that day, which meant the man never made a call. He was pretending. A deeper dread settled in an hour later when I checked my Coinbase account. The Bitcoin was gone. Thousands of dollars, transferred to a shadowy wallet. No trail, no recourse, gone like smoke. The phone's location stopped updating around the same time. Either it was smashed or shut off. But the worst moment came a week later. My dad knocked on my bedroom door at 6:12 a.m., his voice low and tense. "Come outside." My mom was standing by the sliding door, whispering to him. "We heard something," she said. "In the backyard." We stepped into the cold. The grass crunched underfoot. It was quiet, too quiet. We checked the fence, the shed, the alley. No one. But I knew. He had my address. And for at least a moment, he'd come to see it for himself. I don't know what stopped him. Maybe the locked gates. Maybe the lights. Maybe he was just checking, reminding me. Either way, I don't stop anymore. Not for flashing lights. Not for waving arms. Not for anyone.